to Commander Central, episode 139, our Mailbag Part 2 show. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Hey, gentlemen, welcome back. This is our first traditional show in a while.
Yeah.
Because I think Chris was driving that last one. Which turned out, I wanted to compliment you. Did a really nice job on that
Did
show.
very well.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a good listen, and it was a good show to be part of. So, well done, Chris.
Thank you.
Throne of Eldraine spoilers and the new Brawl deck spoilers have all hit in the last day or two. We won't go into that too much, but
Next week.
what are your initial impressions just from the stuff you've seen so far?
I want the commanders, so I guess I'm buying the Brawl decks? Question mark?
Yeah, the Brawl deck commanders all look good. I'll give them that. And Throne looks good too.
Throne looks good.
We've mostly seen a lot of commons and uncommons so far, but those all look good.
Yeah.
And we also got all the sets from next year announced.
Correct.
So there's one new plane and Theros and
A core set.
With
a new card type, and
yeah.
I feel like they're bringing, what was that mechanic from the unset this past year? Contraptions?
Yeah.
I feel like they're building something like
who
that.
knows?
Because Merrill said you make new cards or something along those lines in standard.
Was that for the monster set?
No, that was for the core set.
The core set, okay. Which also I think is a Teferi's the
Teferi
focus
is
of that
in
one.
it, because, we all love Teferi.
And then back to Zendikar, which looks to be mostly Eldrazi free too. Which
Yes. Back to adventuring, not...
but like Riddle Zendikar's a pretty great.
They're going to be
set.
Eldrazi there. I don't care what anyone says. Don't even get it twisted.
There'll be remnants for sure of them roaming around, but it should be just kind of a plain world.
hope
And I
they're-
think fetch lands too, right? That was
did
announced.
mention the word fetch lands, but that's all we know right now.
Yeah.
I
So-
doubt they reprint the enemy fetches in Standard. I highly
Well-
doubt it.
Well, at that point in time, the shocks will be rotated out. If
Yeah,
it's
because
a fall
that's the
set next
fall
year,
2020 set.
so anything that's fetchable will be rotated out. The
I
problem
bet
is
you it'll be new fetches like what Prismatic Vista
and that
was.
could be. The problem is that fetch lands are so expensive, a master set doesn't do any good for the prices. They really need to be in standard, but they're a pain in the butt to have in standard, and they're a pain in the butt for future, whatever the future,
Standard
the
is.
the new modern format's going to be, whatever that winds up being, that will be a pain there too. So I guess we will all see, but we've got dumped a ton of information in the last day or two, and we will be talking about that next week. So now that we're back in kind of a normal schedule here and have played had a chance to go to the shop and play some post-Vegas games, anybody play anything fun lately? Chris is prepping for GP Indianapolis to play some Modern.
Yep.
What deck are you bringing?
This is airing after GPND.
Yeah. What deck did you bring? How's that?
Red, Green, Tron.
Okay, all right. So no one's getting any advanced information. You're bringing.
Right? Because no one's going to be playing Red, Green, Tron. I'm hoping to catch the field off guard.
Nice.
I was really hoping you were going to say like Merfolk or something.
Bringing it back.
Fish people!
Bringing back.
It's a
Tin
good deck.
fins.
It's a good deck.
Well, hopefully, good luck with that. Hopefully you do well.
Yes.
Thank you.
I got to play a few games with my new deck at the shop. Varchild, Betrayer of Keld.
The creatureless mono red deck,
One creature in it.
besides Varchild?
Yep, I put Urabrask in it.
Okay, so that's an update since I originally saw Mach 1.
And here's why. So I was looking for ways to be able to...
They enter-tapped. All the survivors enter-tapped.
For other people, yes. and I was looking for ways, first of all, to be able to get... Because you want to get Varchild off the field to get the survivors back under your control, but there's not a lot of blink effects in red. Well, there's a couple polymorph effects, and one of them which is Reality Scramble. You put a creature in the bottom of its controller's library and then reveal from the top of your library until you hit a creature.
Right.
So if I have Urabrask in my library, that will get me back all the survivors and then flip Urabrask into play, giving them all haste. And if I don't have Urabrask in the library, if it's already in my hand or in play, it just reveals Varchild, who comes right back into play then. And I still get all the survivors. So that's why I went to one creature just for that play with Reality Scramble.
You know how annoying of an opponent I would be?
They make me flip all the
I
cards.
would make you flip every card singly so I knew exactly what was in your deck.
Well, if someone wants to make me do that, they can make me do that. So that's
Or
why
I'm going to be like, just hand me your deck, let me look through it as you go and grab your commander.
So that's why I went with the one creature there.
You're like one step away from Possibility Storm.
It's a controlled possibility storm. That's why I know where
Only for
everything's
him.
going.
Yeah.
Only for me. So it actually played pretty well last night. I think I lost the 3 games I was in with it, but it played well in all 3 games and did fun, weird, stupid stuff. At one point I had Blade. I had Black Blade Reforged on Varchild, so it was like an 11/11, and I got to on swing drop a. Oh, what is a card? It's an entwine where you can either get an extra combat step or a double strike, and if you entwine, you do both.
Yep.
Savage Beating.
Yes.
I got to Savage Beating somebody, which gave my creature double strike and made a ton of them, and then I got to get them all back. And so it's a really stupid deck. I've enjoyed it so far, and I went and ordered a bag of plastic army men on Amazon, and you can get them in red. So I ordered a bag of red plastic army men to use for tokens.
That's better than the babies that Joshua Swoop uses.
Josh Swoop had the bag of babies, so I'm going to use red army men for my survivor tokens. So I'm liking the deck so far, except for Chris. You'll find this interesting. The one card I played it 3 times last night and was not happy with it every time was Faithless Looting.
Really?
Because I've got no graveyard synergy at all, so I'm just pitching cards. And I have a bunch of copy effects in the deck to copy extra combat steps. And it's most of those red draw spells, it's like as a part of this, discard a card. So if you copy it, you just get the draw effect.
Yep.
In a Faithless Looting, if you copy it, it doesn't. I mean, it's still double Faithless Lootings, but. So I think that one, like in that specific deck, it doesn't do a lot of work.
Is it foil?
It is not a foil.
I'm going to say I'll take it off your hands if it's foil.
I did, however, at one point in time early in the game, I was desperate for mana, and I wound up having to cast the red finale of
Destruction?
Destruction, I think.
Isn't it Promise?
Yes.
Finale of Promise. I was at 3 mana because I had gotten Mana Hose early, so I cast Finale of Promise for 1, and cast Faithless Looting as one of them, because I couldn't cast I had enough to do it by itself, I guess, at that point, but I could cast it for 1 to get another land, and I had a red elemental blast in the graveyard and cast that from my instant and blew up someone's, I think, Heuristic Study.
That's a perfect target.
Yeah, it was. So that felt really good. So anyway, that's my first new deck of this calendar year,
Nice.
and I've been happy with it so far.
Are you running Blade of Cells in that deck?
I am not. I did, however, just put in. And I thought about it at one point in time, but I just put in, I think it's Twin Flame from.
One of the Theros blocks.
Yeah, which makes a token copy of a creature, and it's only 2 mana to cast.
Way cheaper.
It's way cheaper, and I can just do it the one time then the Varchild copy token dies, and I get all the survivors back. So that's one of the things I like about it. There's a lot of dumb cards like that like create interesting interactions just in that deck. So it's been fun so far. We will see if it sticks, but I've liked it in the playtesting I did. I did have a great play made against me last night. In my Vela deck, I had cast a Mere Battlesphere and then went to cast 1 with a machine, which draws you cards equal to the greatest CMC among artifacts you control, which I thought was Mere Battlesphere, so it would have been a 4 mana draw 7. The player to my left copied it, which didn't hurt me. I'm like, well, whatever, that's fine. And he had a 6-drop in play, so he was going to go draw 6. But I had tapped out to do that, and then, of course, he passed priority, and I got mana tithed.
Oh, no.
Which kills my one with the machine, but the copy
goes off
the stack, too, so it wound up being a mana tithe that, like, denied opponents 13 cards, basically. Denied me 7 and denied the other player 6. How's that for a mana tithe? Blow up 2 spells with 1 single mana tithe.
That's really good.
That was a pretty pro play.
Wouldn't the copy still resolve?
Because my spell would fizzle and there's no spell to copy.
Oh.
Because the mana tithe goes off first.
Yep, the copy doesn't see it. Yep.
And the copy's gone up in the copy.
I play this game all the time, people.
However, I did see a bad Armageddon last night.
It was not me. I was not at the shop.
It was not you. However, it may have been someone who lives in the same apartment as you.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I'll take it out of the deck when he's at work one day. That's fine.
As he kick out, and I'm not saying there are absolutely good times to cast Armageddon, and this is one where he cast it. I'm like, that board state isn't at all in your favor. So he wound up. The game did wrap up quickly at that point, but it did not wrap up in his favor. So if you want to reach out to us on social media and talk about any new decks you made, or talk about any bad Armageddons you've seen. How would you do that, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, searching CMDR Central, and you can find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
You can also find us on Teespring by searching CMDR Central, and like Chris said last week, whoever shirt sells the most between mine and his, Scumbags Unite, and Trash Card by the end of the year, the loser gets a pie in the face on video.
Did we ever determine what kind of pie that would be?
I think it should be the loser's decision.
Okay,
I really don't care.
All right, that's fair.
Every time I've done this before in the past.
It's usually cream pie or something.
Well, usually what we do is we buy like
a mini cake,
like one of those empty pie things where it's just like the crust, and then you just take a thing of whipped topping and you just.
That works too.
Okay, cheapest way to do it, and then it's still messy as all it can get. So.
And there's not like strawberry or cherry pie filling splattered all over the kitchen or wherever we recorded.
You get sugar in your eye. You're
that's a good call. All right, so yeah, pick up your T-shirt if you want to determine who's going to get pied.
Yes, come unite, scumbags, unite.
So do we have any contests wrapping up, or have we just wrapped up?
We have new ones started.
Okay.
The winners were announced on the Deck Tech last week.
Oh, that's right.
Time travel here.
That's right. We're doing a few shows out of sequence here.
So we do have a couple new ones kicked off though on Twitter. We are giving away the MTG wristbands that we picked up from GP Vegas.
Oh yeah, the 5 from the 5 different
Core set
Planeswalkers.
Yep. So we'll be giving all 5 of those away to 5 lucky people.
There we go.
We'll pick 5 winners.
All right.
And then for Patreon, we're going to give away this awesome Ultimate Guard mountain playmat that we found in collection hunting.
There we go. Brand new, unopened, still sealed in the box.
Yep. So obviously follow that, retweet and follow us to get entered in for the wristbands, and then as long as you support us on Patreon, you'll get entered in to win that playmat.
Very cool. All right, should we jump right into these mailbag questions here?
Let's do it.
Because it's a pretty long list.
Don't know if we'll get through them all once again, but...
we shall see. First one is from Leighton Villanueva. You can find him at DL Complete Trash.
Trash card!
Which Chris could appreciate. What cards and type of cards do you wish you saw in more people's decks?
I think just spot removal.
Sure. Strategically speaking, I don't think we see enough spot removal. I don't think we see enough graveyard hate.
Yeah.
Those are probably the 2 main ones. And actually land removal, like targeted land removal. I think there's no reason not to have at least a Ghost Quarter and a Tectonic Edge in most of your decks. They're both very cheap, or Field of Ruin.
Yeah.
2 of those 3, if you can afford a Strip Mine, great, or a Wasteland, great. But I think you should have 2 land removal lands at least in most of your decks. I don't think we see enough of that. Beyond that, I think people should maybe experiment a little bit more. Yes, Riftic Study and Mystic Remora are great in every blue deck, and we usually recommend them when we're doing a deck tech. But...
Trash card.
I've never had someone...
Which one? Both?
Yes.
Yeah, both. But like, there's... How many times have you seen a Riftic Study? Do you remember any amazing Riftic Study plays? Whereas, like, the first... I can think of multiple...
I can think of one.
Okay.
When I stole a kid's Riftic Study the turn after he cast it, and then cast my own right after that.
I'm sitting right here.
But, like, I've been running Psychic Possession for a while, and I've had multiple, like, crazy things happen with Psychic Possession. Number 1, it's a cool card, but number 2, people's reactions to seeing it is always interesting. So I think sometimes, particularly if you're somebody who has like 5 or 6 decks or more, I think people should take a few more chances and be like, well, obviously the optimal play here is Riftic Study and Mystic Remora, but maybe I'm going to try something else weird just to do that, because that can generate fun stories and it can make you... It's a way to do homework too on cards. Like, I've never tried this before because obviously these 2 cards are better, but maybe if I try it, you'll discover some extra synergies. I think people should take those kind of chances more too. So I also think doing things like, I've got 4 blue decks. Maybe this 5th blue deck I'm making doesn't need counterspells.
Maybe you don't need to build a 5th blue deck.
Well, right, yeah, true.
It's the worst color in Magic. I don't know why you'd build it anyways.
But like if you're playing green something else, maybe you just that's the deck that you go all artifact ramp or all enchantment ramp versus green's traditional land ramp. Like, I think people should try to shake that kind of thing up more too. So. Next, what commander do you love seeing on the other side of the table? Any ones in particular for you guys?
That's hard.
I can't think of the name of the dude now. Now it's just bothering me. The Jeskai or not Super Friends, but Pillow Fort Commander.
The new one?
No, the horse dude.
Jeskai horse dude.
I think he's a horse. Maybe he's a leper.
Zedru?
Yeah, Zedru.
Oh, he's Zedru.
He's a goat?
He's a goat.
Same thing.
And I think he's a minotaur technically, but that's like a goat. Yeah. And I think it's a she.
It is a she.
I have no clue.
Well,
It's some sort of animal with
There we go.
horns,
All right.
I guess.
I like to see, like, in our local shop, decks I have fun playing against.
Okay.
So like we have a Lazov 2.0 deck in the shop. I like playing against that. Even though it kicks my teeth in all the time, I like playing against Reki. We have a cool mono green Yeva Nature's Herald deck in the shop. Like I just like playing against decks that are fun to play against. I don't care if I win or lose. They always do something interactive, and they play different every time I play against them.
I usually like seeing token decks for some reason. I like playing against someone's token deck. It's a fun strategy.
You just like casting sudden spoiling on 9,000 creatures.
That's definitely true as well. I'm going to go get my engineered explosives because you get a bunch of tokens out. I do like doing that, but I like playing against token decks. I like seeing someone who has a deck that is going to make them run a ton of cards that you never see anywhere else. The mono black Kamigawa one that whenever a creature gets targeted, we've got one in the shop, and I've just forgotten the name.
Hirobi.
There we go, Hirobi Death Whale. That Hirobi deck's hilarious because there's
I hate that
15
deck.
or 20 cards in it that like nobody runs anywhere but that deck, or the one that has Changeling, Mistform Ultimus.
Yes.
There's a ton of stupid cards in Mistform Ultimus decks. We've got one in the shop. And when she was playing that last night, and just like the amount of dumb things that you see in that deck is the same reason. So I like seeing decks like that to play against them, and I always have a lot of respect for losing to a weird corner case deck like that. So that's my answer.
Chris, you got anything?
No. I just like Zedru.
It's like Zedru. Okay.
Because I know I'm just going to draw lots of cards, and they're going to do nothing.
Or
and
like
it's gonna be
KNT
awesome.
or something like that.
Dan, Slumbering Human, asked us, which do you prefer, Oathbreaker or Brawl?
Okay, I'm going to start this. We have avoided talking about Oathbreaker for
Yeah, we
a good
have.
6 months now.
Yeah.
And Max is fired next week.
Yep.
I see where this is going.
There's reasons. I will choose Brawl just because they make Brawl product now.
Sure, yeah. How about you, Chris? Do you have a preference, or have you played both of them or either of them?
Some of sound really stupid right now, and I don't care if all of us just laugh at us. What's the difference between the two?
So Brawl is basically standard commander.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
100 cards or 60?
Man, I don't even remember.
I think they're
it's
60.
60 cards.
Okay, I would prefer Oathbreaker then. That's the Planeswalker one, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the Planeswalkers, and you have a signature sorcery spell.
Yep. The biggest reason I don't really like either of them, I like the theme of Oathbreaker, but I would prefer it to be a 1v1 format over a multiplayer format.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've played exactly one game of each. And
That's one more of Oathbreaker than I've ever played.
Yeah, I've played one of each with somebody else's deck both times. I don't have a deck for either. They were perfectly fine. I don't even know if I have a preference. So what I would say here is I'm the kind of guy that when I go to a restaurant that I know has something on the menu item I really, really like, I get that thing on the menu. That's my favorite thing. I don't really care what the second or third best thing on the menu is. I just want the one I know
Yeah.
I like.
You're just like my wife. So now here's the next question for you. Do you eat off your wife's plate then?
Sure, I'll try it.
My wife does
Yeah,
that to me,
yeah.
and I'm like, why didn't I just order you something like this? Oh, I just want to try it. And, oh, it's really good. Well, next time I order it, we'll go back to the same restaurant. She orders the same exact thing again. I'm like, why don't I order you this? No, I'll just taste it off of your plate.
That's why you always get fries, so they have their own even though they don't want it.
That would probably be different if I went to restaurants 5 nights a week, but I don't. And I would say that this analogy extends to Magic too. I play usually 1 night a week because I just have stuff going on in my life. I've got a job and I've got a kid and I do content creation and I'm relatively busy for the most part. If I was single, I remember being 22 years old
Hey.
and how many video games I played when I was that age.
Hey.
Well, but like you have a real job too,
I do,
and you
yeah.
do content creation. But like when I was 22 or 23 and was working an entry level job, had I been playing Magic seriously, then I would have been playing 5 nights a week or 6 nights a week or whatever because I had time to do that.
Right.
So I probably would be playing Oathbreaker or Brawl, and I would have a favorite. I have nothing against the formats necessarily. I just have a finite amount of time, and I'm going to play Commander, which is my favorite. And if I had more time, I'd probably be playing Modern,
Yeah.
not Oathbreaker or Brawl. But that's another.
Modern
thing
is the
entirely.
greatest format ever. I don't know why you peasants play this one. Shout out to everyone.
Next up, we have David Harris at Devoider1. How do you clean old cards, if at all? Have you guys ever made an attempt to do that?
I never have.
I have once, and all that I really did was use like a Q-tip or whatever, and just kind of try to brush the stuff off of there. Because sometimes you get an old card and it's got sticky
Yep.
stuff on it or something. I never use any product or anything because that'll destroy the card.
I actually just did this a week ago when I was putting my Varchild deck together, because I've got a fork in the deck, and my fork I have is an awful, was a dirty white border. So I used and I've done this in the past, but I did it again with this fork. You can use a pencil eraser, particularly on a white border card.
Yes, on a white border
you're
you can.
Very, very careful. And it will basically pull all the dirt and grime and crud off. It's not going to deal with ink or things like that. But if there's just dirt from playing old school stuff on a dirty table with no playmat and no sleeves, an eraser will do some work there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've in the past tried to clean up a dirty or cloudy foil with a Q-tip, and if you just use oil off your fingers, even just touch the card and then just really lightly brush it with a Q-tip, you can clean some of the cloudy stuff off foils too. That's the extent of what I've ever attempted to do. I did, however, look at a small collection last week, and this is kind of a side tangent, but the guy had written his name on the back of all his cards with a Sharpie years and years ago. So the double face palm, since we have no video, just what just happened. So yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, man. I don't think I can give you the $75 you wanted, and he didn't want to come down in price. So it's like, all right, well, good luck.
Yeah.
There was a few okay cards in there, but everyone had his name written on it in a Sharpie.
Instant damaged.
Yeah, I was like, well, and at that point I can't even sell off bulk to Card Kingdom or something, because that's all.
They'll ship them back.
Yeah.
Or trash them.
Right. So anyway, don't do that, because that can't be cleaned. Joseph Wonder asks, what is your pet deck and what is its power level, Max?
Mine is probably going to have to be Dromoka.
Yeah?
It's probably a solid 7.5.
Well, I would say I meant to mention this, talking about what commanders you like. I was going to say my favorite commander of yours is Dromoka, and my favorite of Chris's is Mogus. Although I like all of your decks. I like your Alesha deck. I like your Brago deck too, but those are my favorites of yours. So that's your pet deck, Chris. What's yours right now?
Probably Mogus.
Mogus?
Power level's probably at a 5 right now.
Yeah,
but
It
I would
could
agree
be a
with
power
that.
level 9 very easily.
But it's still, even at a power level 5, though, it still impacts the board every game. You have to respond to it.
Yep.
And it creates an interesting dynamic where you're like, okay, well, the deck isn't doing great. He's behind, so it's not a threat. However, I'm still taking 5 damage a turn from the Mogus and from the, whatever other
Sulfuric
things you have.
Vortex and the Mana Barbs that's in play. And
even if it's not out, you're like, is Mana Barbs coming down next turn, so I'm going to lose 9 life?
It's probably my longest put together deck. I think I put it together maybe 6 months after we started playing.
yeah,
It's been
And
together
it's slowly
forever.
been tweaked
Yeah.
ever since.
So next we have Paul Kittner. You can find him on Twitter at pkittner13. Why are Planeswalkers underplayed in EDH outside of Super Friends and walkers who can be your commander?
My personal guess on this is a lot of the good walkers are heavy mana intensive, but they don't do enough to impact the field for what they cost.
Yeah, I can see that. I think people also, they paint a giant bullseye on you.
That's why you got to play trashy ones like Jace Belrin and just be like, everyone draw a card. Now I
Yeah.
draw a card. Now everyone
Man,
draw a card.
people still swing at Jace. I've seen somebody drop a Tybalt before, and everyone's like, "Can't have that sitting around." Yeah, I think that would be my answer. They generate aggro that maybe isn't always worth dealing with.
I think it's twofold. I think it's the fact that they do generate aggro instantly, whether it's a Tybalt or Teferi Hero Dominaria. But in EDH, it's a multiplayer format, so unlike Standard or Modern, where you just have to worry about, oh, my opponent doesn't have any creatures to deal with my Planeswalker, you have 2 extra opponents that may have a 1/1 Goblin that instantly chips down your Planeswalker from that activation you just used. So being able to play them without protection is a lot harder to do in a multiplayer format than it is in Standard or Modern or even Brawl or Oathbreaker.
Because that's always the traditional evaluation for Planeswalker. Can it protect itself the turn it comes down?
Yep.
Well, that's a whole different set of math when 3 players, that 1/1 Thopter token that your Tezzeret makes seems like a really good defender because it has flying and it can keep anything from hitting Tezzeret in a 1v1 format. In a 3v1 format, that's a lot of people that can swing into that Tezzeret then.
And that's why Elspeth Sun's champion is the best.
I mean,
'Cause she creates
she's
3 of them.
She's way up there.
Or she just blows everything up.
Right,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, she's fantastic. William Jogensen at SlickWilly74 said, if you could fill your 4-person EDH pod with any 3 other people, who would it be?
Ooh.
So it will be anybody. I've got 3 that just pop into mind immediately. One is a non-Magic person, but he plays Magic. That's John Darnell from Mountain Goats. Because I've always been a fan of Mountain Goats anyway, before I even knew he played Magic. So I like that would be super cool to be able to play a game with John Darnell. And the other 2, I picked 2 non-EDH people. I'd love to play with Reed Duke because he's Reed Duke, and I'd love to play with BDM. He's like, man, that dude is the smartest, most interesting guy around too. And Reed's great. He's knowledgeable and a great player. But
BDM plays Commander.
Yeah, he does.
does.
But he's not a Commander player.
Yeah, he's not really like a heavy Magic player. Period. He's more of a Magic personality nowadays.
But he'd be great to play. So that would be my 4-person pod, including myself. How about you, Max? What do you got?
My first one is a Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, I thought about him. He was in consideration, and so was Seth Rogen. I know Seth Rogen actually plays.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun, too.
That would be a lot of fun. That would be. No one would be probably sober during that session, but that would be a lot of fun.
I just want to hear his laugh every time he plays a land. Manatide.
And you have to have him and Chris in the same pod just for the laugh off.
Oh, no.
3 other people I still got. Jeez, 2 other people.
2 other people.
Math is hard, okay? It's Wednesday. I think I would love to play against Gavin Verhey. I didn't get to do that in Vegas this year, but I got to meet him. I don't know who my 4th would be, so probably me, so I have a 50% chance of not screwing up the council's judgment.
How about you, Chris?
I'd probably choose Sheldon Menery.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Because he's big into playing, and he loves to play casual.
Yeah.
And play not OP decks. He likes to see all the interactions, which I think would be amazing to see how he plays.
My one thought, I thought about him too. My one thought about that was I'd feel so bad if one of my decks just blew up, because that does happen sometimes. How terrible would that be if your deck just blew up on Sheldon Menery, and you're like, no, really, man, it usually doesn't do this.
Well, I wouldn't care. My goal would be to cast Cyclonic Rift as many times as I can so he bans it. Other than that, I can't even think of the guy's name. He's a football player.
Cassius Marsh.
Yep.
Cassius Marsh, yes.
Just to see the bling, just to see how blinged out his deck is.
I just want to talk football. That's what I want to do. And I don't really know a whole lot of high-name EDH players, so this is how I'm going to win our contest. I want to play with every single one of the other people that we have in our community, our Commander Central community, because you guys all love me, and I love all of you as well.
You have so much crap on your notes right now, it's not even funny.
He's playing politics.
Speaking of football.
It's my favorite thing of Commander is playing the politic game.
Speaking of football, my department is doing like a last man standing thing. So every week, we all pitched in $5. Every week you pick a team to win that week, but you can't pick that team ever again the rest of the season.
Oh, interesting.
So I figure out my strategy. Whoever the Dolphins are playing, I'm picking the other team if I haven't picked them yet.
Oh, that's a good way to go about it.
So I picked the Ravens this week because they're like 23-0 favorites.
And then they're
just need to win. I don't care about the over-under. But if you get one wrong, you're out. Completely.
Interesting. That actually sounds kind of fun.
And so I didn't pick the Packers first because we're playing the Bears and it's the first week. Rodgers didn't play at all.
That's always a crapshoot game too.
The Packers are 21-5 at Soldier Field.
Well, I know that, but
in
you
the
never
Rodgers
know.
era, so
You never know. That's not a solid week 1 choice.
All right. Next, Tom asks, how do you manage your collection? Your favorite ways to collect? Do you buy and sell a lot? Do you hoard stuff? We all hoard stuff to a degree.
We all hoard stuff. You should see behind this cubicle wall. I have like 8 5,000 count boxes of bulk, and in my laundry room I have another 5 or 6 5,000 count boxes of bulk that are all unsorted.
Most of my stuff is sorted. I do.
Except for one box that his mother-in-law dropped.
I just sold it.
Did you?
I sold it.
That's where all those fetch land for land.
It was mostly bulk. I had gone through it at some point, so it was stuff that I knew wasn't worth a ton. I just got rid of it because I'm like, I don't want to re-alphabetize. Because once upon a time, I had most of my stuff alphabetized or roughly sorted by letter. So I don't have a ton of bulk anymore. I've gotten rid of a lot of my stuff.
As have I.
I have one 5,000 count box that just has cards that at some point were worth something or are worth that I just don't want to get rid of because I might want to keep them for something. I have a fat pack that's EDH staples, quote unquote. So like my 4 soul rings and my extra Explosive Vegetation and Cancel and Manolith.
I was wondering if you were going to catch that because I caught it right away.
I've literally had like 3 ounces of beer, and that took me way too long to catch.
So I have that. I have a box that has like things I'm saving long-term semi-specs that I found in collections. That's organized, but I don't have any of that stuff online in a list or anything. None of that's categorized. So like if I see, hey, a card just exploded in value, I have to go look through my stuff to see do I have multiple Stoneford Mystics or just the one? So that isn't categorized. My collections are, my decks all are online in Architect. So I have those all posted online, but that's really it. I did, however, just pick up, or I haven't got it yet, but like I found out I can get it. My wife found an old card catalog at school yesterday, like you used to see in the libraries.
Nice.
And
I've wanted one of those for a while.
it was in storage at school. She stumbled across it yesterday and just went and asked the principal if they would get rid of it. And he's like, yeah, it's been there 20 years. You're welcome to it. So I'm going to have that now to put my stuff in the basement that I've kept. So I just am getting that this weekend.
Nice.
How about you guys? Any special storage things you do to keep your cards
I have the local kid build 5,000 count boxes at the shop when I need them,
and then go grab another one?
and go grab another one.
Well, I used to sort by color, and now I'm just, ever since I moved, everything's like randomly, like literally, like when I'm going looking for cards for Modern, when like sideboards change, I'm like, I open up my binders, I'm like, I know I have that card, and then I start opening up deck boxes. 30 deck boxes in, I'm like, where is this card? I can't find it. And I'll be like sitting over on my desk or something. I'm like,
No, I did do that because I do have some EDH decks I've put together and then taken apart, and I've never taken them all the way apart. So I did find a couple of those actually. I was building my Varchild deck as I was digging through stuff. I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm like, oh, that's this deck. I'm like, oh, well, I have a foil Mana Crypt in there. and then I went through and I found a second one. I had 2 foil Mana Crypts stuck in like decks that I had taken apart. I don't remember acquiring either of them.
So the Lathless would be one.
Lathless was one, I think, and the other one would have been, I think, was the Tesa deck I'd built.
Oh yeah,
'Cause
17
she was
mana
7
Tesa.
mana, yeah. So that's what those were. I'm like, oh, I don't even remember acquiring 2 Judge foil Mana Crypts, but apparently I did, and there we go. So yeah, I do occasionally stumble across that kind of thing.
this is turning into that place at a Wastelands that he lost behind his desk.
Then he moved and found them.
Yeah. I actually gave one to CCO Ryan when we were in Vegas to alter for me.
Nice.
So, all right. Josh asks, do you prefer legendary creatures from special sets like Battle Bond or Conspiracy when you build, or do you like legends from standard sets or even Commander Precons? Is there a preference you have when you build a deck?
I prefer the ones from the special sets like Battle Bond and Conspiracy, and even like Modern Horizons to a degree, because those sets are made to do crazy things. Where
Sure.
Standard, you're kind of confined to what's going on in Standard, or what has happened, or what might happen in the future. So like Battle Bond, we got partners with.
Right.
Conspiracy, we have Queen Marchesa. We have both the mono green thing that makes all the mana in the world.
Yep.
You know,
Solvala.
Sovala. Like, I just think they kind of can break the gate a little when they design for those special sets and be like, we don't really care if this is broken because it's supposed to be drafted.
You also don't get standard. Sometimes you get those commanders like Kolgan that doesn't necessarily work in Commander because
Hey, it dashes.
Yeah, I mean, or Tomic, that's never going to be playable in Commander. So you get a few of those in Standard in a way you don't see in other products. How about you, Chris?
That was a typical scumbag answer from Max over there.
Yeah.
Let's just do broken things.
Yay. Convoke and...
I don't really care where it comes from, in personal opinion. It's all about building the synergy and how
Sure,
you want
yep.
the deck to play. Like, I'm looking at some of the new ones that have been spoiled, and I'm like, this could be interesting. How can I do this?
Like the Jund Dragon.
Maybe.
We were kind of discussing this on EDH Recast, and Joey asked if anyone was playing a Commander from the new Commander sets, and I'm like, well, the new Commander sets are out, so now I feel like I'm okay to build one from last year's set. That's one of the things I kind of do is I like, and I was joking.
I do the same
Let
thing,
the
though.
hype die down.
But I do, right. I want to like give it time for there to be, for me, there's no decks in the meta, so I want that to have time to have occurred. So that's, like, I joke about like wanting to build hipster decks, but part of it is I just want to do something that no one else around me is doing, so I tend to want to wait. However, I'm curious now. We've had so many new commanders in the last 3 or 4 months, and we're going to obviously get another, looks like 20-ish between Brawl and Eldraine.
There's supposed to be a lot of them in Eldraine.
Yeah, so maybe I'll build something new just because there's going to be so many that aren't going to get touched just because there's so many possible variables between those sets and already the last couple sets that it's probably a little bit easier to do than it was once upon a time where you would get 3 legends in a set or something and the Commander products came out and that was it. So
True.
that might change a little bit. Matt asks, what is your favorite card you've discovered while brewing that nobody knows about?
I have one, but I can't really say nobody knows about it.
What's that?
I discovered this card during the rotisserie draft as I was building my deck,
Okay.
and it's called Gruesome Fate. It's a sorcery for 2 and a black from Rivals of Ixalan, and all it says is, each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control.
Oh, for your token deck.
For
That's where you had
token
that.
decks.
Okay.
Like, I had never seen this card before. I'm like, this is awesome. So I actually have carved out a spot for it in my Regnan Krav deck as well.
Nice. And any for you, Chris?
I'd have to say the biggest one, and people know about this card because I've talked about it quite a bit, but when I first pulled it out, a lot of people didn't know what the card did, and that was Planar Void.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was looking for a way in black to get rid of graveyard stuff aside from Bajuka Bog, and I couldn't afford the Leyline at the time, so I went digging hard, and I'm like, oh, hey, how come no one's playing this card?
Yeah, because basically almost a 1-mana Leyline of the Void.
Yep.
It's your stuff, too, and it isn't a replacement effect, but it does good enough for the most part.
Yeah, in some decks you just don't care about your graveyard,
Right.
so just get rid of everyone else's, too.
One of the things for me is when I built my Kresh deck, I obviously I wanted to build a Fling deck, and Thud had just came out, so I'm like, okay, well, there's 2. And I went looking for similar effects, and there's actually a lot of them out there. Soul's Fire is one. You have Rite of Consumption. There is a split card one from Dragon's Maze called Flesh and Blood, Gravitic Punch. So there was more of those than I thought, and that was kind of cool when I was doing digging around for that to find other cards that like you're never gonna run anywhere but are good in that deck.
I thought of another one that everyone caught off guard, like when I play with new players, when I was playing Ural, and that's Instill Energy.
Yeah.
A 1-mana green enchantment that gives haste, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Speaking of, I may need a copy of that if he's got one laying around.
I'll go digging.
I mentioned Reality Scramble in that Varchild deck. I think it's kind of a neat find. Every time I play Triangle of War in my Glissa deck against somebody who hasn't seen it before, they're like, what is that nonsense? And it's a fantastic card in that deck. And
Nowhere else.
And nowhere else is it good, but in that deck it's great. So those are a couple that we found. And I love finding those kind of cards that are just really good in that one specific deck of yours. Grimjack asks, do you feel in 2019 there is an overemphasis placed on an EDH deck's overall CMC, both in your local meta out in the wild, and do you find yourself compelled to lower the converted mana cost of your decks at the expense of fun or thematic cards that may have a higher cost?
Ooh, I think in our meta, yes. Like at our LGS, when I build a deck or tune my decks, I want it as lean and mean as it can get while still being like that power level 7 to 8.
Sure.
But, out in Vegas, I saw a bunch of just big Timmy decks where it's just a bunch of big creatures. So I don't think everybody is really into that, lowering your
Sure.
CMC just to do things. I mean, and I get that. EDH is about doing those big splashy plays, playing those 9-drop dragons you don't get to play in standard. So I think there's enough for both sides of the fence. Knowing that I try to keep my decks in that 7 to 8 power range, I don't feel like I'm overpowering those people that want to just play the big splashy stuff and take their time ramping to that mana cost. But so I can hang in there with them without maybe pulling punches, but at home I can still come out punches left and right and still maybe have a game that goes 12 turns.
I think sometimes you get people that get a little too hung up on the exact numbers too. I actually had a conversation in Vegas with somebody who mentioned how they try to keep their deck below 3, and if they like add something that bumps it to like 3.2, they try to make a tweak to keep it below 3.
Jeez.
And I think the problem with that line of thinking to a degree is some of those cards aren't really the CMC they say they are. Like your deck builder might tell you that your deck has a CMC of 2.98, but you're never casting Cyclonic Rift for 2 mana, or at least not enough that should that's a 7 mana spell.
Let's take Emrakul the Promised End, for instance. A 13 mana, 13/13.
That's 7.
Yeah, that gets removed. You
Yeah.
know, it goes down and equal
Yeah.
the stuff.
So like there's a lot of things that like, particularly if you're getting hung up on an exact number, like I got to stay below 3, or man, my deck went above 3.4 and I need to get it back below 3.4 because it's getting too big. Obviously, keep an eye on it to a degree. I think you don't want your deck to be like at 5.6 or something silly like that. But just bear in mind that just because a spell looks like it's got a high CMC or a low CMC, that isn't true. And if you're worrying about those 1 or 2 point swings here or there, I think it's not a big deal.
Well, that's also the case with green decks. Let's say your average CMC is at 6 for your deck
but
or
you're
whatever.
ramping
You
up
have
crazy.
so many ramp
Yeah.
cards in there that it doesn't matter because your average turn you're going to be sitting on 8 or 10 mana anyway.
Right.
Now, I also do think the other side of this, though, is like, I understand the argument that, hey, it's fun to sometimes play a 7 mana spell and you don't want to get too hung up on that. However, it's not a lot of fun to play a 7 mana, Dead Bridge Chant that does nothing before someone pulls it up, or, a Grave Betrayal, and the next turn someone drops away onto the Void, and that becomes irrelevant. So just because a spell is like a big, flashy Timmy spell, too, I think those can be not fun in their own way if people are playing maybe good Magic around you. I'd rather sometimes cast 2 4-mana spells than I would that big 8-mana spell that's very easy to shut down. So I think it's not just about being efficient. I think if you're talking about having fun, sometimes those big spells that just get neutered aren't fun, at least for me.
That's true.
Now, I think if you're getting hung up on, like, I want to have all 1-drops, then maybe you're leaning too far in the other direction. But, like, I would much rather cast a couple 4s than I would an 8 or 4 1s usually.
I should try an all 1-drop deck and run 20 lands and see how it works.
It's basically,
I should have to have
it's
1
Edric.
land is all I need.
The deck check we did last week is pretty much that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Has an average CMC of 1.77.
Yeah, that was lean. Glenn asks, if you have a ton of cards that work within a deck, do you give them a certain amount of time in your deck before cutting them to slot something else in? And what methods do you use to make this decision? So basically, how long do you test a card in a deck before you are unhappy with it?
This is a loaded question.
It is.
Because I have said this numerous times that I have to check my decks to see if Soul Ring's still in there. Because there are times where I'll play for 6 months and never see that card.
Well, or you just play, but you put a new card in the deck, and then you're like mad, and you're like, that card's been trashed so far, and you're like, well, have I ever actually cast it? I've just never seen it. That does happen.
Right. I actually just went through this this past spring with Spark Double in Brago. I thought it was going to be a great card because it can copy my Planeswalkers, it can copy Brago. But every time I've casted it, there hasn't been a target that I want to copy.
Well, that's what I found. It's not even so much how the card performs when it's in play. A lot of times you can tell when you just draw it in your hand and you're like, I don't want to cast this right now. And then 4 games later you're playing again and you draw it and you're like, I don't want to cast it now either.
Yeah.
That's when I get really, and this happened again, my Varchild deck that's brand new. I have an artifact in there called Angel's Trumpet out of Urza's set.
Yeah, I love that card.
And it forces you to attack every turn, and then creatures that don't attack get destroyed or something. In my thought, the Varchild tokens can't attack me, so I'm forcing other players to then use them against one another, except where they get destroyed, and maybe I don't want people to destroy the tokens that I'm planning on taking back, too.
Yep.
And that happened multiple times last night where I had it in my hand, and I'm like, okay, if I play this, that person's probably going to let their tokens die because they don't want me to get them back. So I'm not even going to cast it. And then both times I drew it last night, I didn't want to cast it.
Are you talking about Angel's Trumpet?
Yes.
So Angel's Trumpet is all creatures have vigilance it's an artifact for 3. At the beginning of each player's end step, tap all untapped creatures that player controls that didn't attack this turn. Angel's Trumpet deals damage to the player
That's what it
equal to
is.
the number of creatures tapped this way. So you are incentivizing them to attack.
Yes.
Especially with all those tokens you're giving them.
So
I like it.
It was fine, but I felt like I mentioned them being destroyed. That isn't true. But there was some reason, there was multiple times last night I just didn't want things to happen. Actually, that's what it was. I didn't want this person attacking into somebody else's tokens they already had and losing all the tokens because they'd block each other or something. There was just ways that the math wasn't working, so I just didn't want to cast it both times. So would be an example of that. But yeah, the thing I would caution is make sure you actually see the card, because there's times when I've been like, this card's been so disappointing, and you haven't even seen it.
Right.
That's a really easy mistake to make. Steve R. asks, what is your favorite card at common or uncommon that you think people overlook due to rarity?
Faithless Looting.
Mystic Fish.
Yeah. I was going to say Knight's Whisper. This
Yes,
is
that's
mine I
another
had.
one. Read the Bones. Like I've
Read the
seen a lot
Bones.
of people where they're like building their decks and they're asking questions. I'm like, where's your Read the Bones? What's
It's only-
Read the
it's only
Bones?
draw 2.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Get that Blue Sun Zenith out of there and run some of that
Yes.
Notion Rain action. I love that card.
Or even the 4-mana one that draw 3, lose 3.
Ambition's Cost, Range
All
Engraving.
of those are solid, low ceiling,
Yeah.
high floor cards. Look at I get Dana in the
There we
contest
go.
now.
You both could hit me with a pie if I win. If I lose. No.
Oh, you heard that live,
Wait,
folks.
We literally could
participating.
end the contest today.
Right. Someone has to hold the camera.
I got a roommate.
I was gonna say we got a tripod.
That's true. Steven asks, what is the process you go through in building a new deck? Do you pick the commander first, choose a theme, power level, etc.?
Ooh.
I always start with commander, and then I go, what kind of themes I can build off of this commander.
Yeah, for me, it's probably both. I'll either, number one, get an idea and then say, okay, what commander will lend itself to this idea? Or I'll see a commander that I like for whatever reason. Like, okay, what could I do with this commander? So it's one of those two usually. But more often than not, it's an idea I have first, then try to find a commander that would work with that idea.
I do it by color.
Yeah?
Like, I sit there like, we'll use Tuvasa. I like blue-white. I like green-white. Let's find a Bant general I really could
Sure.
jive with. Okay, well, I don't want to play Rafik. And at that point in time, there were like 3 other Bant generals.
Right, yeah.
And Derevi's just off the table because I'm already a scumbag.
And you're like, what does Janara do even?
Right.
She's just an angel.
So Tuvasa came out, and I picked her up right when the set came out, and I sat on it. Because, like Dana, I wait a year to build the newest
Yep.
commanders, essentially. And then I'm like, well, I don't even have an Enchantress deck. This is something new for me. It's in a color combination I haven't done. It's 3 colors, something I'm not good at. Let's start there, and that's kind of where I always start. Is always color combination, and then a theme.
Ultra Budget Brews at Brews MTG ask, what is a pet card that you know probably shouldn't still be in a deck, but you just can't bring yourself to cut it?
I have to look at my deck list now. Crap. Thank you, Andrew Cummings. This would be
Yes.
him from EDH Rec?
Yep. Myself, I like the card, but Overwhelming Intellect probably shouldn't be in a deck. I think it's an effective draw spell. I do like it, but 6 mana is a big ask. Even if I do get a nice draw off it, that's a lot of mana to leave open. So it's a kind of a pet card of mine, but power level wise, I'd be better off just running something like a 2 mana draw 2 or something. Better off with an opt probably most of the time, or with a what's that creatures? It costs 1 less if creatures have flying to draw 2. The new one,
Wings of Words of Wind or something like
Yeah.
that.
I'd be better off with, or Chart a Course or something. So that would be the one for me.
Mine is from my Brago deck, and that would be Reality Acid.
It's slow. I mean, if it sits out forever, it's amazing.
I missed blinking that 5 times in Vegas because I forgot it was on someone else's board.
You'd put it all over in someone else's play
Yep.
field and forget about it.
I never remember when I cast that because I'm like, ho, here comes the pain
Right.
train.
And for those who don't know, Reality Acid is a 2 and a blue enchantment, has Vanishing 3, enchant permanent,
Yep.
and then when remove all the vanishing counters, sacrifice the permanent and Reality Acid. Well, in Brago, I can blink it. It goes away because vanishing, the Reality Acid left the battlefield.
Right.
Then I put it on something else. This card was meant so when I need to go to Scumbag level 9 or 10, you just infinite and blow up everybody's lands,
Right.
and then put it on something of mine, and I never blink it again.
Right.
It's slow. It is extremely slow. It's a combo piece that I typically don't get the combo off in a very fast amount of time, so it's something that probably should be cut from the deck.
How about you, Chris?
I would have to say it has to be one of my all-time favorite cards. Max has done this to people. It's called Master of Cruelties
Yay!
out of my Alesha deck. It is a cute, I can kill you in 1 turn
Sure.
type of deal, but that's all it is.
Right.
If you draw it or end
and
up...
then that kind of feels bad sometimes too. The situation I've had or I've seen with that deck where I've seen you be like, I'm playing with strangers and I don't want to kill them. So
Yup.
sorry, Max. You're taking this one.
Well, and then it completely turns the target because they're like,
Right.
oh, you just one-shot him from full life. And then they're like,
you're that
okay.
guy. You're playing that deck, are you? Travis Lanoy asks, with the recent trend of going cheaper in decks, what one card do you find yourself cutting from decks that maybe you used to play more often? The one that jumps out at me, and I guess I've heard this conversation happen before, but Solemn Simulacrum is a card that I maybe ran a little bit more years ago, and it's not necessarily even a CMC. I just think it just doesn't do enough anymore.
Unless you can abuse it.
And I even put it in my Vela deck because it's an artifact-based deck, and I still found I didn't want it in there. Even a deck based on artifact creatures, I felt like it just wasn't good enough anymore. Anything particular for you guys?
Ooh. Chris, do you have one? Because I need to think on this.
No, I don't.
Avengers Zendikar is a card I think I haven't.
Yeah, that one's, I've seen a lot less of those.
But I used to see that in like every green deck just as a
Right.
staple, and I don't see that much anymore.
I used to be big on those like 7-mana wraths, like your Fated Retribution or your Routes,
Decree Pain,
Decree of Pain, or even Angel of the Dire Hour, which is like a
Flash.
settle the wreckage on a stick, essentially.
Yeah.
I've moved away from those just because you're stuck holding 7 mana up in a
Yeah.
deck that it's pretty obvious you're holding 7 mana up when you're
Right.
in green, white, mono, black. Pretty much, you're not playing Rift, so they know it's a trick.
Yeah. Joseph Wonder asks, what would it take to have you rebuild your very first commander deck?
I kind of tried with the rotisserie draft. One of my first commander decks was Trostani Selesny's Voice.
And one of your first ones was Tajik, too, and you tried rebuilding that last
That
year.
one's been through 5 or 6 iterations, yep.
How about you, Chris?
I would have to move towns and go into a new meta because my first commander deck was Slivers.
Combo slivers.
And you need to get a new Sliver Queen. I can't remember what the sequence was. Either Glissa was first or I had a Niv Mizzet Pingers deck. And the Niv Mizzet deck I don't think I would rebuild because it was not great.
You can't win
But
by,
what-
you can't
the
commander
question,
damage
the
that
question
way.
is, what would it take for you to rebuild it?
Man, I don't know. I do actually want an Izzet deck.
I
Build
know
the
why.
new Niv Mizzet out of, was it War of the Spark? Or
Yep.
something
So
like
like
that?
triple.
Maybe next year if it's
Because then you can just build it as a
if no
card
one's
draw
playing
deck.
it.
We all know how Dana likes to draw cards.
Well,
You could turn your Tower End deck into that.
That's my fallback if my Varchild deck doesn't work, if I play it a few more months and don't like it. My next attempt at a multiple combat step deck is going to be Melek Izzet Paragon. Because no one's going to be expecting a combat damage trick deck out of Izzet. And I can copy the extra combat steps with Melek.
This is literally the conversation Dana and I had the Tuesday before we leave for the Wednesday before we leave for Vegas. I think I'm going to build a new deck in the next 4 days. I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, I have this really good idea for Melik, double combat steps. I'm like, okay, but I feel like you need to throw some extra turns in there too. No, just double
extra
combat. I'm like,
combat
there's not
steps.
enough.
There's a lot of them, but so anyway, that's what my
At that point, I'm going to revert back and start playing Time Stop again and just be like, no.
Oh yeah.
So that's what Varchot is doing right now with extra combat steps, and I might try that with Melek if it doesn't work out. And for the last question we have here, Paul Kittner at PKittner13 asks, what are cards you want to run but can't find slots for them? I don't know if it's necessarily that, but like it's getting tougher and tougher, I think, to add cards to decks when new ones come out, particularly if it's like a generic semi-staple. Prismatic Vista was a nightmare to find slots for. I had a tough time finding slots for it. And now that Arcane Signet technically can go in most of your decks, power level-wise, but I'm like trying to figure out what do I cut, how to make
Soul Ring.
room for one of monitor. I mean, maybe... Did I lose Commander Sphere at this point? I mean, I'm not running many more. I'm not running Worn Power Stone anymore. I don't have many Thran Dynamos in decks. I'm like, I don't know what to cut to make room for it.
Just don't run
Start
it.
cutting Signets, probably.
Maybe.
Because it creates any color, so...
So that's what's been tricky for me when we get these new cards that feel like staples. I don't know what to pull. It also tends to get tough, I think, when we get a mechanic that's really good in a deck. Like we got a bunch of good proliferate effects that are great in Super Friends decks, and my Mono White Super Friends deck in particular. I had a really tough time making cuts in that deck because all of a sudden, when More of the Spark came out, I got like 4 new Planeswalkers that were good and a bunch of proliferate effects that were good in that deck. So like, I wound up making 8 or 9.
Did you put that new sword in there?
I didn't. Actually, combat damage isn't that reliable in that deck.
Okay.
I thought about it, but it didn't make that one. And I tested Wanderer Strike, and Wanderer Strike is good too. Like the proliferate is really useful on there, but I didn't know. I'm not going to cut Swords of Plowshares or Path to Exile for it. So,
That's true.
And I had to find room for a Generous Gift too. Like it was just that deck was a pain to find slots for. So that's what's been tricky for me. The other one I wanted to comment on about this question was I was playing a game with a player last night who had a brand new the legendary wall, the Jeskai wall deck.
Yep.
And he was just talking about it as we're playing. He's like, yeah, I shouldn't have a problem getting mana. I have like 14 mana rocks in here. And I didn't say it, but I was like, how do you have room? I struggle to get to 7 most of my decks these days because you want ramp, but I'm like, I want to put a bunch of fun stuff in there too. I don't have room for mana rocks and that kind of thing.
That player might have taken the idea that I've heard years ago. Former host Luke Witten was something him and I discussed quite heavily. Was the amount of mana rock upping and cutting of lands.
Maybe that's true. Like once you get to a certain point, you can run less lands.
Yep.
So,
and like the math on it and all that. So that's something.
That never works out in my favor. Like I stack my decks with mana rocks and I never see the lands to cast the mana rocks.
Right. Because like that works out good on turn 5 when you've gotten that balance going and you're drawing less lands but like maybe I just have to mull more. Maybe that's one of those things I just have to accept the fact that I'm going to have some more mulls to get to those lands. To cast those extra rocks, I don't know. But that's a tough one for me, too. I've been struggling with lately is I want to add 110 cards to a 100-card deck and to hit my X amount of rocks and X amount of draw spells and removal and whatever. And it's tough to pack that into 100-card slots. So I think that's a good amount of questions we've answered here, gentlemen.
I think that's great. It looks like we'll be doing a Mailbag 3
next
month.
All right. I think that's going to be it. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to talk about the commanders from the Brawl decks, if that sounds good to you guys.
Do I have a choice?
You do not.
Okay. There we go. It sounds great.
Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show was edited by Ken Peddle. Find him online at LOAD3R. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDR_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We'll be back with a deck tech on Thursday. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.